UFC 296 Edwards versus Covington just took place, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my reaction and breakdown to every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Shamil Gaziev versus Martin Buday. It was a bit of a... Shamil Gaziev was less of a out-of-shape Tom Segura than Martin Buday, so he just sort of outstruck him on the feet throughout the entire fight, stuffed the takedowns, beat him up against a cage, in the pocket, in close range. Eventually, Martin Buday couldn't take the punishment anymore and sort of just gave in to a standing TKO from Shamil Gaziev, who had a good performance, I guess. You know, it's hard to dominate at a heavyweight and make it look easy, and he did that without a one-punch KO, so good job, Shamil Gaziev. Put on a good performance, and looking forward to seeing what he can do moving forward as an undefeated heavyweight. Picked him to win, and he got it done. We move on. Andre Fili versus Lucas Almeida. Very, very happy for Andre Fili over Lucas Almeida, because I do like Andre Fili. He's been around for a long time. He's an OG of the game. I do like seeing him get wins now and again, as long as it's not against an up-and-coming prospect that we care about. I don't mind it. And he got himself a KO in the first round. I believe he stepped through, landed a right hook right on the jaw of Lucas Almeida in the middle of an exchange, put him down, beat him up on the ground even worse. Fight gets called off. Good job, Andre Fili. Gets himself a TKO win. I don't know if he got a performance bonus. He didn't get a performance bonus, but Shamil Gaziev did. Alright. Shame for Andre Fili. Had a good performance. Lucas Almeida just didn't seem at all good on the feet. You know, I mean, he seemed a bit hesitant on the feet. Didn't really want to throw too much. And when he did, he left himself open eventually to Andre Fili's shots. So, good job by Andre Fili. He gets the job done. We move on. Tagir Ulanbekov versus Cody Durden. Durden was doing all right, but he was just getting out positionally beaten by Tagir Ulanbekov. And it's one of the things that these Dagestani guys do so well, and these Western Hemisphere grapplers, or Eastern Hemisphere grapplers do, is they mix in their grappling positional dominance with their wrestling position. So it's not just a bunch of wrestling that's going on. It's them getting to the back, them getting to a good position to maybe go for a sub from. And that's what it came down to. It came down to them two scrambling to gear, eventually getting to the back and choking out Cody Durden with a rear naked choke. Good scrambles between the two of them. Durden did okay striking, but got hit by Tagir Ulanbekov at one point while he was on one leg and dropped down somewhat. Wasn't too much of a great knockdown, but it was something that sort of swayed that round in favor of Tagir Ulanbekov, and eventually just kept getting the back and got the back and choked him out in round two. Good job, Tagir Ulanbekov. We move on. Up the card, Casey O'Neill versus Ariane Lipski. Ariane Lipski got scrappy straight away with Casey O'Neill. Didn't let her get her volume off whatsoever and proved me wrong. So good job, Ariane Lipski. That's 2 losses in a row now for Casey O'Neill. She just doesn't look like she's ever trained a day in MMA in her life. And it does worry me sometimes how that is the case in MMA, because at one point she looked like she could have been a good prospect heading towards the belt. And then 2 fights in a row, it's like, have you ever hit pads before? Ever? Like, what is going on with the punches that you're throwing? I guess she did have some time off between her last fight and this one. A little bit of time off. Nothing too crazy, though. But Ariane Lipski just put a whooping on her. Eventually put her away. Got herself an armbar in round 2 after stumbling Casey O'Neill on the feet with some good combinations. Good job, Casey, to Ariane Lipski. Rocking Casey O'Neill in round 2 at the start and eventually finishing her off with an armbar. Amazing performance. We move on. Up the card, Cody Garbrandt versus Brian Kelleher. Picked Cody Garbrandt to win, said he was lock of the card, and he was the lock of the card. I'm going to be honest with you, though. Still don't like the way he's throwing punches at people. Still do not like the way he's doing that. I know he got a nasty first round KO, and I think the UFC even gave him a performance bonus because... No performance bonus for Garbrandt. Because Irene, Aldana, Karol, Rosa got fight of the night. And Lipski got a performance bonus. But no Cody. Okay. I mean, I guess they were expecting these guys to win and they won, so they're not going to pay him out even more if they don't have to, but that's interesting. He got a nasty KO. Landed a big shot on Kelleher, rocked him at one point, hurt him badly. Second shot on him, caught him right on the chin on the inside, a very close pocket shot. And eventually down goes Brian Kelleher, face first into the canvas. Couldn't take any more. Sad for Brian Kelleher, but again, I am going to say it. Garbrandt looked so open on the feet at times. He's way faster than Kelleher, looked a lot bigger than Kelleher out there, way more powerful as well. But he just seemed to throw a lot of stuff from the hips, leaving himself open. And he was even getting his leg chewed up a little bit by Kelleher as well. So I think his, his calf was swollen up by the end of the fight already after just a round of fighting. So I guess he knew he needed a first round KO. But I don't know, good KO. The performance before that, he still looked a little bit like a hesitant little Garbrandt. We move on. Irene Aldana versus Karol Rosa. To be fair to them, I don't mind them getting fight of the night bonus. I just wish they would have given out all performance bonuses this card. But this was a really good fight between these two. And it started with Irene Aldana winning the first round, I believe, if I remember correctly. I think she won the first round because she did more of the damage and landed big shots on the feet that would get the attention of Karol Rosa and make her start backing up, and then Irene Aldana would start going after her. Round 3, Irene Aldana, I thought, won that round as well. Now, Karol Rosa outlanded her in these rounds, but what it came down to was Aldana was pushing forward. She was bullying Karol Rosa backwards with her shots. And when Aldana got hit to the leg, yeah, her leg would go funny, but that was the extent of the damage that she showed that she took in that fight with Karol Rosa. Whereas Karol Rosa would get hit on the chin and stumble backwards quite a bit. So I think that's just what it came down to. The damage was in favor of Irene Aldana, even though her leg was getting chewed up. She got the job done, and she was throwing big punches and landing big powerful shots, pushing forward, being the aggressor. Won the fight 29-28. Good for her. We move on to another fight on the card. Alonzo Menifield versus Dustin Jacoby. Sucks for Dustin Jacoby because he was better than Alonzo Menifield, but just kept getting caught at the worst moments possible. Round 3, he's winning the round, having the best round that he's had. Boom, gets caught by a big shot and nearly gets finished by Alonzo Menifield. Has to survive the round. Round 1, I think similar situation. He's doing really good. Schooling. Was he schooling him? I feel like it was round 2 he was doing really good. Landing really good shots on Alonzo Menifield, and then he got dropped at one moment at the start of round 2 and then wobbled towards the end of it. Maybe it was round 1, who knows, but something happened in one of those rounds where he got wobbled at one moment and dropped on his ass in another moment, and it was just like, Jacoby's doing so good. He's outstriking this guy. He's better than this guy, but he's been dropped off balance with some bad knockdowns twice now, and he's not going to be able to win these rounds that he got dropped in. That didn't stop Dustin Jacoby from clinching up for the rest of the fight, looking for a takedown, and then sticking his arms up in the air like Colby Covington, like he just won the decision. I don't like it when fighters do that. It annoys me, but they keep doing it. We move on. Up the card, Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. Dear God. That was tough to watch. Honestly, KO of the year candidate. Of course, it got a performance bonus. 2 punches were landed by Josh Emmett, and one of them was an absolute fatal blow to Bryce Mitchell's jaw. And it was face on as well. It wasn't like he span Mitchell's neck around. It was like Mitchell threw a 1-2, was off-center to the side, and Emmett tagged him with a right overhand right on the front of his face and just dented his face in a little bit and put him stiff. Never seen a guy hit the canvas out cold faster than that in recent UFC history. Josh Emmett might just be the hardest hitting featherweight on the roster that we have. No one's putting people to sleep like him at featherweight. And, Jeremy Stevens did it to him. But still, man. Absolutely vicious finish from Josh Emmett. I said he would get a KO early in this fight, and I was worried about Bryce Mitchell in the matchup, but Bryce Mitchell was still a big favorite going into this fight. I had no idea what the odds were doing. I was picking Emmett all week, so Josh Emmett gets a nasty KO in round 1, and I don't know if Bryce Mitchell's going to be the same after that one. That's a tough one to recover from. That's why you don't step in and fight Josh Emmett on 2 weeks' notice. And then don't shoot a single takedown as a grappler. You know what I mean? I just coughed over a fart there. Nasty KO by Josh Emmett. Terrifying KO. We move on. Up the card, Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. Okay, let's talk about this matchup. So round one, Tony again is looking all right. Like, he's in the fight, he's throwing shots. They're not landing too clean on Pimblett, but a couple of them are grazing him and hitting him here and there. And Tony's trying to go to the body now and again. And Pimblett, fair play to him, went to the best game plan you can go for against Tony. And that's to chew up the legs. He's not been doing MMA training. He's been doing lunges in a field with David Goggins. Cardio non-stop, even though cardio was never his problem. And he even had a chance to use that cardio in this fight in the third round with Pimblett. But again, another one of his problems is his takedown defense and his lack thereof it. Round one, competitive. Tony landing good shots. Paddy landing all right shots here and there. Keeps landing low kicks on Ferguson that are kind of starting to annoy Ferguson in the fight. I think Paddy might have failed a takedown at one point in round one as well. Wobbled Tony with a good right hand early in round one, but it sort of died down a little bit. Then later in round one, he cracks Ferguson with a 4-punch combo. Misses some of the punches, but I think the last 2 of them landed really clean on the chin of Ferguson. Rocked him badly, timed a flying knee that barely got blocked up in the arms of Tony Ferguson, but then landed a left hand as he came back down that stung Ferguson on the chin again and nearly had him out cold. Very surprised that he survived that from Paddy Pimblett. I thought Pimblett was going to finish him, especially when he got mount at the end of round one and started pouring on the ground and pound. But then in round 2 and 3, Pimblett does start gassing. And man, he's open on the feet in those rounds. Chin up in the air, arms down by his waist, breathing heavy. And Tony Ferguson couldn't capitalize on him. Why? Because Tony Ferguson has no takedown defense, we keep finding out. And that's his big problem. Takedown defense. He seems to have this understanding of, oh, it's okay, this guy took me down. I'll just use the blades and shades from bottom and slice this guy open and put him in a triangle again like I always do. But he doesn't always do that. Like, I think he's been sort of like a victim of believing in his own ground game too much. Guys know when you're trying to set up a triangle on him. They know when you're trying to go for an armbar. And Pimblett knew. Even when Tony was going for these subs, Pimblett knew, and he did the right things to escape them, and then got right back on top position, landing little punches as Ferguson landed little punches. I just didn't understand the game plan from Tony Ferguson. You've got to be scrambling to get back up to your feet, not to lay on bottom position looking for triangles. Never be on bottom position in MMA. Paddy Pimblett wins the fight. Nothing crazy impressive, but after a year off and after his broken foot, some well-needed momentum for Paddy Pimblett. Wins a decision. Doesn't need to take too much time off. I'd like to see him back in there pretty soon. Depends on when the next London card is, I guess. But yeah, Paddy Pimblett, solid win. Didn't look great in the third round, though. Started to slow down. And if there's a better lightweight in there, we keep having these conversations about Pimblett. We move on. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Thompson. Shavkat wins the fight. Round 1, I was like, God, Shavkat, what are we doing here, brother? Thought we were supposed to be fun. You know what I mean? Who's this Shavkat guy? What have you done with him? He's supposed to be really fun and doing really cool stuff. So round 1 starts. Wonderboy starts landing a couple of body kicks on Shavkat. Shavkat's not liking the distance control. And he starts shooting in for takedowns. And that Wonderboy really well stuffs. He stuffs the takedowns very well. The problem is with Wonderboy, he has a very point striking style on the feet that isn't known for getting KOs. So not only does Wonderboy have to have really good takedown defense, but he's got to be perfect on the feet as well and win a decision somehow, which is just not going to happen in that fight like that, where Shavkat has so many opportunities to go for a takedown. But Wonderboy did stuff a bunch of them. Stuffed a bunch of takedowns in round 1. Made Shavkat look kind of silly in round 1. And I was starting to say, hang on. Shavkat's not looking good here. He's looking hesitant on the feet. And he's not getting his takedowns. But then round 2, Shavkat gets the takedown. Ends up on top of Wonderboy. And just stays on him. Stays on him. Stacks over him. Breaks down his rear arm trying to posture up. Flattens him out to the canvas. Eventually gets himself. I believe it was a rear naked choke that he got Wonderboy with. That was like across the jaw, but he found the right angle for it, and it was a nasty squeeze that he had. I think there was like 4 seconds left in the round, so maybe Wonderboy shouldn't have tapped, but again, we're not the ones in the choke, so maybe he did feel like his jaw was about to pop off in that face squeeze. Tough to see for Wonderboy just after watching Tony Ferguson call it quits pretty much. But it seems like Wonderboy may have to call it quits as well. We move on to the co-main event. Alejandro Pantoja versus Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval, I feel like he had an opportunity to win this fight, and I'm glad I didn't pick him now because I would have been screaming like, this is where he's about to win. I would have been so frustrated with the result of that fight. Pantoja won. I said he would win. He won the fight. Basically by being more dangerous on the feet, even though Royval seemed more in control on the feet. Royval just refused to commit to any power shots. Where was the teeps to the body, the front kicks to the body on Pantoja that you should have been firing all night long? Pantoja was allowed to chew up the legs of Royval, throw heavy body kicks on Royval, and shoot his takedowns whenever he wanted them, with no repercussion. And at one point in this fight, Alejandro Pantoja, first of all, he wobbles Royval on the feet quite a bit. But at one point in this fight, Pantoja is exhausted past round 2. Absolutely exhausted past round 2. Breathing heavy. Really, really sloppy on the feet. I know he's been that way before, but still, the takedowns aren't looking too strong. Really, really sloppy on the feet. Not throwing shots with good skill whatsoever. And Royval is in his face. Clearly the fresher of the two of them with more cardio. And Royval's in his face doing feint, 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 flip, flip with the lead hand. Flick, flick with the jab. Flick, flick. Lead hand, flick, flick. He didn't want to go for any, like, where's the sit down? This guy's tired. I'm going to grit down and go for some hooks. There was none of that from Royval. He just sort of tried flicking at range for a decision win. And it backfired on him and he lost to Pantoja with positional grappling. So it is what it is. Moving on to the main event. I've already said some terrible things about this. Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Stunk up the place in the main event. I'm no more impressed with Leon than I am with Covington. I don't know why everyone's all of a sudden... I'm trashing Covington for this. He had a terrible performance after all the talk that he's done, especially with Trump being there for him to coward his way out of this and not even grit down and try and win the fucking championship was fucking pathetic of him. Don't get me wrong. But let's not start saying Leon Edwards is a fucking G for that performance. His performance was the same as Covington's, except he threw a couple extra leg kicks around. That's how it felt. So listen, we can trash both of them. That was a dead fight. And I know Edwards is in the position where he's the champion and Covington's got to show him something. And if he feels like he's ahead, then he's going to just stay ahead. I get it. But Covington was in there, not getting takedowns on you until round 5. You're stuffing the takedowns. You're stronger than him. You're out scrambling him in moments as well. You're getting your own takedowns. And you got Covington throwing a 1-2 with his hands by his waist after he's finished throwing them. Not coming back to his chin, leaning over himself with his lead hand down in front of him. Where's the counter shot from Leon Edwards that puts this guy away? It just wasn't a good performance from either of them. And I don't know why people are like, what a clinic from Leon, but what a shit performance from Covington. It wasn't good from either of them. They both looked quite bad out there. Edwards just did more damage per round by landing a couple of better punches and a couple of more leg kicks. But Covington is where we really got to take aim at here. You talked so much. You brought up all the stuff you brought up at the press conference about Leon's dad. You brought Trump to the event, saying you're going to do this for the US, calling out all the redcoats and stuff like that. Come out in your outfit to the press conference. All the talk you do. You've been gifted this opportunity because you haven't fought in ages and you finally get another title shot for some reason. And you don't even go for it. You don't commit with any punches. You barely push forward. You don't even barely try any takedowns either. They all get stuffed anyway. And the main time you actually try for something is in round 5. And when you have a dominant position, you're throwing little tapping hammer fists and shots to the body like that's going to win you a decision. You clearly lose the fight at least the first 3 rounds. No way you get any of them. And then you stand up at the end doing the belt symbol and cheering like you've just won the decision and being annoyed about the decision afterwards. The fight wasn't close. It was dull and fucking boring because nothing happened from either of them. But Edwards landed more leg kicks around. Covington just sort of bitched out of a fucking title fight and it was sad to see. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.